Okay, so we are doing a proper good session on Myanmar with
Yes.
my PhD student, Roberta.
Apologies.
Obviously, she's an expert on Myanmar. I'm also a bit. So it's like more conversation rather than just like question answer. So we just talk it through for, close to an hour to give some, proper understanding what's going on lately. Lots of change since like, this February coup. So the military is in power, still in power with full force. It looks like, they are just consolidating more power every single day. The latest one, I will start with this latest news. I mean, so I saw the army general went to Russia.
Yeah, to Moscow.
That's quite an interesting development. So basically, Russia is quite okay to sell weapons, which is linked with another close development in the United Nations. United Nations General Assembly passed a motion that the countries should not supply arms to Myanmar. And the two countries abstained from that vote is China and Russia.
As always.
And one country was against the motion was Belarus. That makes sense because this guy really wants to this like regime in like Belarus. Obviously, he's doing lots of nasty thing in his own country. So he really tries to convince Putin that, I'm all good, I'm one step ahead. Whatever you want, boss.
Yeah.
So
I think they are making a very clear statement.
Through and that. one of the things I saw like this with this visit, he's like more interested in like buying special equipments, the military hardwares, which is like helicopters. So that you can fly in close proximity and then shoot. Very good idea, isn't it? So
are they getting ready for something?
Because normally helicopters are not used in a war situation because it can be shot down.
Yeah.
But if it flies over the protesters, is good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the plane cannot fly too low.
No, but the helicopter can.
Yeah, and they can also land as well, more or less anywhere. And so that's quite interesting development. It looks like, these two international support is extremely vital for this regime's survival.
Yeah, I think it has been interesting to see how since the beginning, China and Russia as well have been to an extent supporting the generals, although they've not been publicly criticizing the coup. Well, they weren't really. They have demonstrated they are ready to support the current government. And I think this says a lot. And we know that for a long time, China and Russia have been supporting of the military, their actions against the Rohingya and so on and so forth. So this is not very surprising. They just continue the same approach.
Can you touch some of the bases about the since coup, like what are this is one major development, connecting with Russia more closely and buying arms and ammunitions and hardwares. What are the other developments you think that are game changer?
Well, I actually see the commander-in-chief as the new president in a way, and he's acting like the president. He goes on official visits. He's trying to like portray himself as the future president of the country through various different engagements. And I think this is the picture that he's been wanting to portray for a long time. I think he started to portray himself as a candidate for presidency since the 2015 elections. And I've noticed that sort of ever since he's tried to become more public and more assertive. He tried to like reach out to various different groups, including the monks. And he's been filming himself in various different environments with various different people to try and portray himself as a possible candidate for the presidency. Obviously, in the latest elections, the NLD, sorry, won by a landslide, which meant that the future president is going to be elected from the NLD majority. And so I think they decided that they can't have that anymore. And so, we had the coup, and now he's basically the new president, if we can call him this way.
And he was also like trying to get rid of all those barriers, the technical barriers, to stay longer.
Oh yes. I believe in I can't remember exactly. I think it was maybe 2014 when he was close to 60, and at the time in the constitution, all the army generals that were reaching 60 were supposed to retire, and then this got changed, and the age for retirement got extended to 65. And now we no longer have an age limit, so they can rule the country for as long as the country needs them.
Because that's the history of Myanmar's, political history. So the army came to power in the 60s and they stayed till 1988. And then another one came in like early 90s and then stayed up to basically, we can think that 2015. So basically, 25 years minimum.
They like being in power for long periods of time, and now they've not resisted grabbing back the power. It's been only how many years? Just 5-6 years, really, since we've really commenced the transition to a democratic government, and they needed to grab back the power. And I think obviously with the coup, his powers have been cemented, and then now he's there for good. I think, at least when I say for good, I mean for the next good couple of months, hopefully not years, but there's a possibility.
I mean, it looks like he's also, becoming more confident about his, rule.
Standing. Yeah.
So he was visiting, externally. Externally, he's been accepted. And especially the big, powerful countries also, more or less give him space. So which is very good for him. And and I think one thing, the latest thing he was doing is he was releasing, make people come out from the prisons who went to
yes.
So basically he's feeling more confident, these people cannot harm me. So, so at the same time, he's very brutal on the street as well. So two things he's doing on the street. He's saying that, you have to behave. If you don't behave, these are the consequences. You will die, you'll go to prison, and you'll be tortured. And at the same time, so if there is not much pressure, you can come out and then, behave and then become a normal citizen under military rule. But I am the boss.
And yes, and then they will know the experience. They will have lived enough torture so that they will not be able and willing to come out in the streets again. And I think this was a great tactic from the military's point of view, to be fair. And it's like the other day when I saw that over about, 2,000 people were freed. It's quite a powerful image when they imprisoned so many during the protests, and they were, as you say, brutal with the protesters, and now they are releasing them. They will spread the word of what happened. And I don't know if it's right for me to say that this will deter protests from happening, but they will definitely stay with the people and everyone that's basically everyone that have contact with the people saying the stories behind the scenes.
But
I'm
also,
still, pardon, yeah.
I think just like one thing here, I think we also don't know what happened behind the scene. With these people who are released, we don't know like under what conditions.
Yeah,
So
that's
like
true.
the condition is like tell the story, your story.
Yeah, but will they be, well, I don't know how necessarily to say it, but will they be able to say the story? Will they will they have the courage? And it's not just about the courage, because it's probably their safety and the safety of their families involved as well.
Yeah,
I think in some time, maybe some of them under some sort of protection from international bodies, maybe they will be able to say what has happened behind the scenes, but not straight away. I wouldn't think so anyway. I bet there was some sort of deal between them and the military once they got freed, you know?
yeah. I'm like, behave, or also, tell the story as well, that, what's the consequence, so that people are deterred. So,
Yeah. I believe we touched upon this on one of our previous chats, but it's probably worth mentioning that, remember when we had the poet,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ket T, basically he was speaking against the protests and against the military government. He got detained, and then within a couple of weeks, his body was returned to the family with some organs missing. And this is quite a powerful example of what military can do to you if you speak against it. And now, obviously, they couldn't have killed that many people because they've only freed 2,000, but we have no idea of how many other people are still imprisoned. But they couldn't do the same to those so many other people. But then by releasing them, obviously, it's combining all the factors. You could say how powerful the military is.
No, it's like, the one thing I see, like, because the poets or even the monks in Myanmar, they are the kind of, the forerunners about, this protesting and then mobilizing people. But in the very beginning, military tried to, make things very clear that, poet, you have to be careful. Monks, you have to be careful. So we did not see any like mass protest from the monks. It's very contained, or very, a small number coming out. So that's quite interesting, because I mean, it looks like those are the two areas, the conscience of the society. If they come out in large number, that will create problem for especially for the like regime. I mean, regime can kill the protesters, saying that, oh, these are just NLD supporters, but the monks are not. So monks are more kind of more like social figures.
They have always been involved. Monks have always been involved in the political life of Myanmar, and they've often taken sides in supporting either the military regime or the NLD. And I think monks can have a lot of power in, to an extent, persuading people towards who to vote with, for instance. And like monks historically have been quite powerful. We have the Saffron Revolution, which had which monks were at the forefront of the revolution. Blaming the regime for many wrongs, and this has led to a change. And I think monks will continue to be powerful. But yes, as you say, there has not been a massive. We don't know yet to what extent or where they are standing fully.
In terms of like, I mean, we saw like a couple of news on economy. I think one of the largest economy in Myanmar is, they have got this special mineral called jade. So it's basically a kind of like jewelry, isn't it? And it's $1 billion industry. And basically it looks like army has got now full control of that industry. So obviously military has been in control of so many other, big
resources.
Yeah. And I think the other side of the story is the multinational companies who are involved in Myanmar, especially with the garments industry. I don't think there is any pressure from their side as well. So it looks like the business is normal. The people are still going to the garments industry, doing things for those big companies around the world. So you can see, like, there is a kind of way to normalize everything.
Yeah, I think they are trying to. They will be trying to normalize and keep things under control and running as smoothly as they can, because they are there to, the military is there to maintain stability and to reinstate the stability that they said it was missing when when the coup happened. So they will continue, and this will probably give them more legitimacy on the long run, I'm assuming.
Because I mean that's the fear. I mean, if they can normalize the situation that this business as usual, then it just the history will just repeat.
Yes.
So this army general will be the state leader, will be accepted everywhere. They will send their envoys to different countries to do all those trade deals. They will perhaps take care a bit of the Rohingya crisis as well. So they will be the deal maker of the Rohingya crisis. So the people who were who were like perpetrating this violence against this community, who were a bit of behind the scene during this, like Aung San Suu Kyi's rule, now they are in the forefront. They are the now guys to deal with as well.
It's quite scary when you think that the general Min Aung Hlaing got into power in 2011, as far as I can remember, since the retirement of Tan Shui, I think. And he's been the one who basically played a very important role in Rohingya, in the genocide towards the Rohingya, in the Rohingya genocide. And now he's basically coming back to say that he will protect the Rohingya and he will try and forward the repatriation deals, which have been stalled on many different occasions. So I don't know to what extent we can, or how he will manage to deal with the Rohingya situation, because it will be difficult to convince the Rohingya to go back in these circumstances, because it's basically the people, the same person that led the attacks towards them, more or less, is now saying that he's going to protect them. And like, I wouldn't believe that this can be even accepted by the Rohingya. It would be hard for me to think that they will go, things are better now. I'd be interested to see how he tries to renegotiate the repatriation deals, but I don't think the military will grant the Rohingya citizenship or any voluntary, dignified, and safe return repatriation.
So that's the more like disturbing part of the story, because suddenly that the perpetrator is in charge of the negotiation,
becomes the savior.
And the second thing I'm more worrying bit is I'm seeing a pattern here. So if you see Ne Win, the first dictator came to power, they more or less came to around that 50 years, 55, 60 years old, and then they stay there. So that this army general is the kind of similar age range with the even if you look back, the second dictator who came in the 1990 early 90s, the similar age, and then they stay up to 80 years old, so 20 years old. So that's the more worrying bit. He seems still very young, and looks like
he's only 65.
Yeah,
he doesn't have to retire.
So he's thinking of 80 years, up to 80 years. What's his plan?
Yes, and they will justify their grabbing back power, like they have done it up to present day, and because they have started to present themselves as new leaders of Myanmar, as we have talked previously.
It looks like, obviously, I think he has got a couple of advantages right now because of the coronavirus situation. So, the protest is not easy on the ground. And the second thing is, because of the coronavirus, there is some kind of, help for him as well from outside world. Because
donations.
International community wants to save everyone's life. So, so this guy is getting money, resources from outside to save his people. So, he doesn't need to do much work there. And he can, redistribute some of those resources to his own people, which is the military, Tatmadaw.
Yeah, to make it more powerful and more sustainable in the long run.
So, and I think the second thing, I think I'm not happy the way the ASEAN, this Association of Southeast Asian Nations, is a big, powerful institute, which is like European Union. And then when they invited him to their conference, I think that's not good. That's not good. So it looks like suddenly he's getting all this legitimacy in his local arrangement, regional arrangement. And externally, he's getting help from China and Russia, two of the permanent Security Council members and big powerful parties around politics. So it looks like this guy has got nothing to lose now. He's now saying that I'm fine. I'm doing fine. I can travel around, I can buy arms, I can sign stuff, though he's supposed to bring back democracy.
Well, that's one of the promises, but I think this one will be postponed for later stages in his run.
So it looks like he's more interested in buying, military hardwares.
Yeah. It was, in a way, I think the Association of Southeastern States, nations, I think it can be criticized for the fact that they didn't try to establish any formal relationship with the national unity government, the government in exile, at all. So as far as I know, this national unity government has been formed with ousted lawmakers from the previous government, and they've not tried to make any contact with them whatsoever to try and involve them into this process that they've started. They've only talked to the general, and they came up with like 5 points to look into, 5-point consensus of some sort, and then but they've not really set any framework, anything. It's just very superficial. It looks like they are doing things, but it's there's no concrete plans or anything like that. And I think this association can be criticized for that, because I've expected a more powerful answer from them, or critique towards the coup, and not inviting the general to have this sort of arrangement done.
And especially it looks like the whole idea, bring back democracy, the proper democracy, the military's idea about it's kind of sidelined. So even if you read carefully about those 5 points, the 5 points is more basically stop the violence on the street. So he's just stopping the violence. He can say that I just released these prisoners, so
2000
so I'm doing this stuff.
See the Asian promised like an envoy and delegates to send to Myanmar to bring all the parties together and discuss, but this was so vague, like what parties, who's going to be the representatives of all the parties involved? How are they going to do that?
They visited once, so far, these envoys. And then, obviously they did not meet the other groups. So just like the one party.
Yeah.
And then, this latest move by the army general visiting Russia and then buying military hardwares. That's like, it doesn't look like, he is deterred by anything by this Asian group.
No, it doesn't seem this way.
No, no. So that's quite interesting kind of development. So what it says like about this guy is, en route for long haul. So he's staying here, and his behavior, his coordination with the external actors looks like he has a plan. He has a plan.
Yeah. And he gets support for his plan. And not just from one party. Yes, it's true that the UN is going to criticize the new developments as well as the European Union and other Western countries, but this won't be enough to deter him from pursuing his big plan.
I mean, especially if you look at the UN, what UN can only do is they can pass something through the General Assembly, which is basically non-binding.
No, it's more like a recommendation.
Because the UN understands that if it goes to the Security Council, and if they want to pass any resolutions, which can be like, you have to be bound by that. It's not going to happen because, Russia and China are there.
China and Russia. Yeah, and they will veto any resolution.
One veto. They will get two vetoes, no?
Yeah, like the same situation happened with the genocide against the Rohingya, when whenever there were resolutions being passed to address that, China and Russia would veto any sort of negative action against Myanmar.
Especially one thing we saw like during the coronavirus. China came out as very, very powerful. They, defended them well in terms of coronavirus. They contained it well. They had the vaccine as well. And then, they were supplying those vaccines to the global south. So they're doing lots of, soft politics diplomacy around the world.
Yeah.
On the other hand, America's, politics was seriously fractured with the Trump administration. And then obviously Biden is still, oblivious of so many things. And the European Union is also fractured after Brexit. So lots of things are not in favor of Myanmar's democracy.
No, it's true. Everything you've said, it's true, and I think the whole coronavirus situation will have a massive impact on Myanmar's democracy, because it's no longer a priority for anybody, and the situation of the Rohingya is no longer a priority because there are so many other things to be dealt with by each individual country, and it feels like the countries will try through sanctions to deter the general Myanmar, or to punish to an extent Myanmar for the coup, for the general's actions, but there won't be a massive input from them, I don't think, or at least not on the short term, I don't think. Hopefully I'm mistaken, but
because the problem is, the longer the coronavirus problem stays, better for the military junta in Myanmar. And I was doing some podcast with like top scientists around the world, and then basically they're saying that global North can, come out from this crisis. The earliest can be like next year, summer, but for the global South, take another 3 years. So this army junta has got serious lifeline. Can you touch a bit on Rohingya situation as well?
I'll try.
Yeah. So, like, obviously, Rohingya population, 1.2 million people, are stuck in, world's largest biggest refugee camps. And they've been there since 2017. This is 2021.
Yes.
Time flies. 4 or 5 years gone.
Yes.
So it's a large community.
We have seen, I think there are in the history, there have been a few waves of displacement of the Rohingya. I think the first one, which was quite significant, was about 200,000 people were displaced in 1978, I believe.
Yep.
And then there was another wave of displacement in the 1990s. Now, from both waves, these waves that I've mentioned, I think quite a large number of them have been returned forcefully. They've returned forcefully to Myanmar. And as you say, the most recent wave of migration, if you can say forceful migration, was in 2017 when basically, as you say, almost 1 million Rohingya fled Myanmar to Bangladesh due to repressive actions of the military. They have been victims of everything you can think of: killings, arson, rape, everything you can think of. And they found refuge in Bangladesh. Now, unfortunately, Bangladesh has to deal with having an enormous amount of Rohingya people in the refugee camps during coronavirus, which makes the situation more difficult to handle because resources are quite low, and there's a lot of strain on the government of Bangladesh. But on the other hand, it doesn't seem like there's any sort of solution on the short term, because everyone sort of hopes that one day Rohingya refugees will be able to return to Myanmar. And a lot of the times when asked, the Rohingya people seem to be willing to go back to their homes. However, not under the current political situation, because their lives would be in danger. So they're basically stuck there. I think we can say that the government of Bangladesh, alongside the international organizations that are on the ground, have done a great job because they contained the virus. They went in strongly with measurements, with restrictions, and they focused on preventing the virus from spreading, which has been, I think, the best thing that they could have done, because the population density in camps is astronomically high, and so if you get the virus and you can't contain it, I think the results could be just devastating. I can't even find words to describe what it would be. But at the moment, up until now, we can say that the situation has been kept under control. The people obviously have suffered because it has become increasingly difficult for them to be there, but also to put up with the new restrictions. But as I said, it is the situation there with regards to COVID and Rohingya is okay. I guess it could be better. There are things to be talked about, but overall, for the time being, the situation is under control.
I mean, especially one of the things we found through our research is, I think that's the very worrying part of that story is, I think almost 60% of this refugee population in Bangladesh is under the age of 25. So these are the very, very young people growing up in refugee camps.
Yes, which is already hard in itself. And given that in the last year, all the non-essential, not just businesses, all of the non-essential facilities have been closed. So the young people have been unable to access like learning centers, schools, and everything like that. It could have a massive impact on their well-being, on their upbringing, which has already been affected by their traumas coming from Myanmar.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things this is one of the things that will have to be sort of tackled in the future, because it is important to find solutions and to amend for the time when people have not had access to education and so on and so forth.
I mean, especially one of the things about refugee camps, you cannot have a university in a refugee camp. You cannot have a college in a refugee camp.
No.
You can have some kind of education system going on, but these are very, very basic we're talking about. So just, that the 60% of this, like 1.2 million people are actually, they need proper access to those public, and it's just impossible, because that's not the way refugee camps run. Is very, very subsistence level, just like living and surviving, nothing much more than that. So that's the worrying bit. So that the whole generation are growing up in a refugee camp, stateless, without any basic education, basic access to the health system. So that those things are seriously missed out. And I think that's insane. That's like, that's just, serious human rights violation of the people's rights, to education, to health, to shelters, to, just basic understanding about, this planet. When people become human beings, they have those rights.
Rights. Yeah, it is true. But going back to the fact that, well, on one hand, the Rohingya are not recognized as refugees in Bangladesh due to the fact that Bangladesh is a non-signatory of the Refugee Convention, and on the other hand, they are stateless because Myanmar does not recognize them as citizens. This places them in a humanitarian limbo, I would say, and this places massive impact on their overall livelihoods and overall upbringing and everything. And I think, to an extent, there has always been the argument of repatriation, and maybe the government of Bangladesh was a bit reluctant in advancing, things like education, and they did not want to necessarily create an environment where they could think that they would be there and it's okay to be, long term, as in for the rest of their lives. And they try to get enough resources to try and come up with repatriation deals and focus on the case where they would go back to Myanmar.
Especially if you try to have some kind of philosophical understanding about the plight of this 1.2 million people. So in a Western world, even like one person gone missing, it creates serious outcry in the media, in the social platforms, and all kind of places. But 1.2 million people just gone missing. And there's no search and rescue there. Though we know that where they live, what they're doing, and how they are surviving, we know those things. It's in the public knowledge. And then the world is still cannot find a kind of realistic solution for it. And so that's the most frustrating part about doing our research on this particular thing. I mean,
I think finding a solution for the Rohingya crisis for us, it has always been a complicated topic, but so like the solutions seem to be there to a certain extent, but when you try and apply the theory into practice, you realize that it doesn't work. And then we need to like try and find a tailored solution for these 1.2 million people, because they simply can't live like that. And they seem to that, they will be there given the new political environment, political context in Myanmar with the general in power, with the military in power. They basically don't have a lot of chance of returning. I don't think, even, let's hope for a miracle when they will be given citizenship. Will they be able to go back? Is it safe to do so? How will we know?
Because I mean, we saw like even during a democratic process, this talk about giving back their citizenship was not there. So the idea about the military will suddenly feel some kind of humanitarian compassion for the Rohingya. We can think about that, but I don't think realistically it's just almost impossible. We don't see this kind of outcome is happening soon. The history tells us a different story.
It's true, but sometimes being a bit idealistic, it helps.
I mean, my worrying part is, I mean, I've got lots of worries about Rohingya situation, especially the current situation, the coronavirus, and this like collusion of Russia, China, and bunch of countries with this military junta. And the other part is the external actors, like the international community. It looks like it's a kind of getting more a side story rather than a sustained story. You need to do something about that. It's just just gone off from the track of our human like relations. No. So it looks like it's not our sensitive part. It just became off our all those sensitivity, kind of outsider. We are so busy with our lives, our own survival. So this 1.2 million refugees plight is off the track.
Becoming that's probably the one worrying aspect of it, but hopefully I don't think it is. I hope that their plight will not be forgotten, and then at some point through loads of research and goodwill from stakeholders, a solution will be identified. So that basic human rights will no longer be on the question list, will be taken for granted as they should be.
There are like two pressing points here. One is like a country is just being deprived of their democracy, and also the historical problem in the Rohingya population is being just became a non-issue, especially from like Myanmar side. They're not thinking much about Rohingya right now because no one is talking about much about Rohingya right now. So how to bring back those things together, like democracy back to the country, and then start those repatriation talk in a proper sense, because military can talk about Rohingya and their plight and then their goodwill, But the problem is there is a serious trust issue with the military, because these are the people who did the actual crime. And, you are expecting a product delivery from the same people is just, isn't like a non-starter for me. So I think that things will be on hold for a long time if this army junta stays. And the couple of things we mentioned about in our previous talk is, whether the army, the institute, this which is also called Tatmadaw, will fall apart with the defections and all those things. But so far, there's no sign of it. Army still seems very, very powerful, strong, very united, and it looks like it keeps on going with like full force. Like short run, we are not seeing, not much movement in terms of, the democracy side of the story, and also the Rohingya side of the story.
I don't know, because when the coup happened, the general promised that they will organize elections within a year or something like that. I don't know if the pressure from international community will make that actually happen, because until now I'm not aware of any further talks on elections and stuff like that. But hopefully the international community will keep an eye on that and remind the Myanmar leadership the fact that they are in power for now because they did the year-long emergency state, but then they promised that they will reorganize elections by the end of that year or something like that. I don't know. It seems by the look of how well the general has been reconsolidating power. It seems like it is safe to say that he's there. He's there, and he will be there for quite some time. But I'm somehow hopeful that the international community can change that through pressure. But again, you have China and Russia to basically offset any possible sanctions.
Also,
do you think the international community would have any power?
Like one of the things, I always know, because of my personal, politics, is the power of the mass, the people. And especially when this kind of news, like the General Assembly passed a motion that no country should supply arms to this regime. This is a big news. But, if you search in the mainstream news media, you will not see that news in the forefront. This is a powerful message, but it has to be transmitted everywhere through everyone. And, so that's the mass movement. So the mass has to pick up this kind of news and then, spread this news that, this is important. We must not allow our country to sell weapons to this regime, because we know what this regime will do with these weapons. They will use it on their people, on the civilians, on the protesters. So every single citizen of this planet has some kind of, responsibility as well. So these are powerful news, powerful information. And if it happens behind our back, that's not good citizenship we are having, which we are enjoying in the Western world or in the other countries. We must do something about this.
By looking at how the protests evolved in Myanmar, they started in February, sorry. And they have been going, and they kept going till about now. Even now, there are protests on the street, and people haven't given up. And I think this is a sign to an extent. And people came together for once, because I would say that the Myanmar society because there are so many ethnic groups, has been quite divided in the last decades. And now people have come together, and I think this is a strong message. And hopefully, this protests will keep going, and this hopefully will have a massive impact in the long run.
I mean, given all the information we have about this regime, and after knowing those information about this regime, when a country decides to sell weapons to this country, that's huge, isn't it? That's a huge undertaking against humanity. I mean, I don't have any words to to say like how you do it. How can you do it? I mean,
it was when the protests started. The protests were basically not non-violent. People have just came out in the street and they protested through various different ways. We had the civil disobedience movement. We had the slow car movement. They just tried to make a statement, and I think the statement was pretty strong. I think as you say, when you see the other developments, it's hard to think that they can stand up the military, but because the military, as we have seen, they responded so violently to the protest. We had people killed, we had people imprisoned, and now we have people released. But we all know that it's a very powerful institution.
It's just an old game. They're this is the good old game they're playing. Put people in the prison, then release some, and then bring back them in the prison, and then shoot someone, and then it just, because it's just army junta is basically, it's an institute of violence.
It's ruthless.
Yes,
and it has been.
It has been. Historically, it proved that it was ruthless. So if you are expecting some goodwill from them, I mean, I will not be hopeful about this regime. This regime, this military junta is just a dead end. Just dead end. There's nothing good will come through this, this kind of institute. I mean, whenever we talk about this topic area, and you can see when you talk, we are not excited about this talk. We feel subdued. We feel somber. We feel mournful as well over the years about this. It's a kind of a scar for the humanity, that the humanity can accept this position that 1.2 million people will be living in refugee camps forever. That's just wrong. So our plan is to do this kind of update every now and then. I think this is important for us, but also if you bring some kind of awareness around the world, so that's the only positive thing we can take away from this kind of talk. So the things we mentioned today, this recent development and the consolidation of power by the army and the external support, but at the same time, UN General Assembly is also doing some good work. Just don't sell arms to this regime. That's a strong message. And when a country says that, oh, I'm against that, that's dangerous. And we must be, aware of this development and then oppose these developments, and then raise awareness around us through our, political figures, through local MPs, through our parliament, because these things need to be, heard, need to be discussed.
They need to be addressed, definitely, because it has been so many years of sufferings, and you and I are speaking here, but sometimes, we ask each other questions on, what can we do, and how can we solve this, or what solutions are there, and we can't realistically come up with something that will work, at least not just now. And with the new developments, it's even more difficult to come up even with scenarios. Because you have the ideal situations, but then what's the chance that they will happen? But yes, as you say, at least.
I think there's the moral and philosophical question you will ask, that if in your society suddenly 1.2 million people gone missing, what will you do? What will you do? I mean,
yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, but I don't think people should accept it. I think people should use their voices to talk about this, because I think at least we can do is talk about this problem and not let it just be. Because once we speak about it, other people will speak about this, and then hopefully at some point we will be able to bring a change to their lives. But again, this is all we can do for now.
Yeah. So I think these are the couple of things we wanted to talk, and hopefully it will do some good to the research people are doing around this topic, and also raise some kind of awareness what's going on, especially with this plight of the Rohingya population. What we'll see the next couple of months, this army consolidation, and they will do things very clever way, and then they will try to get their legitimacy from the external bodies, and also obviously they have power internally, so they will consolidate more power internally as well. But one of the recurrent theme will be the violence against their own people, against the humanity as well.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting to see that the violence towards the Rohingya didn't stop. Like, the military has attacked various different ethnic minorities throughout the history, but now they are attacking their own people, the Burmese majority. So this is a drastic change, and then I think it is very important now to see people coming together and protesting against the actions of the military.
And the international community must support these people on the ground.
Definitely.
Because the alternative, this army junta rule, is just dead end. There's nothing there. It's just a black hole.
Yeah. Hopefully this will be the case, because you can't expect people to be able to maintain protests until the military is weakened, because it will never be weakened by just that. Of course, people will need support, and then the international community should be able to support through various ways people's efforts.
Thank you, Roberta, for our good talk today. So we'll meet again on this topic issue. This is important topic issue for us, for our own research as well, and we'll fight.
Yes, thank you for having me.